Sorry about that, babe.
Developed by Technopop and published by Sega, Spider-Man vs. the Kingpin was released on the Sega Genesis in 1991. Now let me tell you, this game was quite the hit. As you could obviously assume, the comic book sphere was all in on the 16-bit upgrade of the web slinger. In fact, not positive if it's just BS numbers or not, but according to one of the developers of the game, when the game was released, almost 2/3 of Sega Genesis/Mega Drive owners purchased a copy. This leads me into my next point discussing this game in my household as a kid. Not only did I like it and play it, but my parents did too. That's right, I fondly remember playing this game with my parents, and my mom was telling me the other day actually about how she would rush home from work and fire this baby up. Thankfully, I still have my childhood copy of the game, again denoted by the large permanent marker with my name on it thanks to my mom. So this piece of my childhood history will remain with me until the end. While this game was also made/ported to the Sega Master System, Game Gear, and CD, we will be focusing this review solely on the Sega Genesis version. Now, after getting all that out of the way, let's start diving into the nuts and bolts of the Sega Genesis classic. Spider-Man vs. the Kingpin is a side-scrolling action, somewhat platformer, where you take control of Spider-Man in his attempt to disarm a nuclear bomb that was set up by Kingpin. Unfortunately for Spider-Man, it won't be easy. Not only has Kingpin framed Spider-Man, making it look like that he is the one responsible for the bomb, but he also has to deal with the myriad of supervillains out to make Spider-Man's day even worse. A wretched cast featuring Doc Ock, Lizard, Electro, Sandman, Hobgoblin, and depending on which difficulty of the game you choose to play, potentially many appearances from Venom. To further add to Spider-Man's woes, at some point during the game, Mary Jane is also kidnapped. Yikes! During your adventure, you will essentially traverse 7 different levels, 6 of which are fairly standard featuring sub-bosses and bosses, while the final level serves as a pseudo-boss rush. Well, you don't actually have to kill the recurring bosses in that level, but anyways, finishing off with the final showdown against Kingpin, who is eager to dip Mary Jane into a pit of acid. Graphically, Spider-Man's pretty good. I feel the colors pop very well and help portray that comic feel and match the levels almost perfectly. For example, the sewers are dark, dingy, and treacherous, the power plant area is bursting with electricity and the vibes, and the Central Park level helps portray this sense of calm dread. My only gripe with the graphics are at times I feel like it could have possibly been a little bit more detailed in a few areas, but I have to keep in mind that this is on the earlier end of the Sega Genesis lifespan. Musically, in my opinion, is where Spider-Man vs. the Kingpin shines. Now, the Sega CD version has a very highly acclaimed soundtrack composed mostly of rock and guitar, but truthfully, that's not my cup of tea when it comes to video games. Rather, I prefer this soundtrack in all of its 16-bit Sega glory. The tracks that stand out to me the most are the sewer level, which legitimately could paint this area in your mind as one of the most haunting tracks of the era and my childhood. Electro's level, where, to put it bluntly, it sounds like electricity ramping up. And the final main stage, aka the path to Kingpin's hideout, giving off almost this mechanical feel, which is perfect considering there are a ton of robots waiting to blast your butt cheeks in that level. And of course, the title screen, also repurposed in the final stage, is one of the best title tracks on the system and instantly gives me goosebumps, reminding me of my childhood. This is, in my opinion, one of the more underrated soundtracks on the console. The controls of Spider-Man can take a minute to get used to. Spider-Man has this variety of melee attacks, but also has many web functionalities. You could shoot your web at enemies to eliminate them. You could also use your web while jumping to swing across the stages. This is one of the few things that could take a minute to wrap your head and reflexes around. And you could also create a web shield, which serves as a shield by accessing your start menu and then selecting the option and then pressing the web button. The other area of the controls that could take a minute revolve around Spider-Man climbing on ceilings, walls, and buildings. Not much to be said, it's a little tight in some areas, a little loosey-goosey in others, and simply put, practice is what makes perfect. Spider-Man offers a variety of difficulty settings: practice, easy, normal, and nightmare. The practice mode ends the game after only a few levels, same goes with easy, but you get to play a few more. Normal is the intended difficulty, and nightmare is basically normal mode but with potential Venom encounters on every level. You could also adjust Spider-Man's stamina on the options menu: tired, normal, strong, or hyper strong. Pretty much self-explanatory. If you want a challenge, choose tired. If you don't, choose hyper strong. Otherwise, just stick with normal. I recently beat this game twice without dying, once on normal and the other on nightmare tired. You could definitely see the difference between these two runs when you watch them. Check them out in the pinned comment and description below. Overall, I find the difficulty of Spider-Man to be fair, aside from one particular instance which I will cover in the following section. Spider-Man vs. the Kingpin is ripe with gimmicks, one of which I'm not going to name here. Do your own deductions, and I like them, for the most part. First, one of the main gimmicks of the game revolves around taking photographs for the Daily Bugle. You can take up to 3 photos per level and receive more money with the more interesting photos that you take, aka taking pictures of bosses. This money goes towards refilling your web at the end of each level. Similarly, you have the option to rest and heal your HP back at Peter Parker's house. The catch, if you choose to do this, you have to restart the level. So I just recommend doing it at the beginning of each level, no skin off your back other than losing a little time. The time? Well, remember that bomb that I mentioned? It's on a timer. If you fail to disarm the bomb before the timer, then it's game over. But realistically, unless you stink real bad at the game, take forever on every level, potentially take a real life nap at Peter Parker's house, you won't run into any timing issues unless the actual defusing goes awry in the final stage. To defuse the bomb, you have to place the keys that you get from defeating bosses throughout the game in a specific order. I thought the order was predetermined, but from my testing, it does not appear to be that way at all. In fact, if you put the wrong keys in enough, the timer speeds up insanely fast, and eventually boom goes the dynamite, or in this case, the bomb. Now for the most polarizing gimmicks of the game, Mary Jane going into the acid and fighting Kingpin. It's possible to not die to Kingpin but have Mary Jane fall into the acid, giving you a bad ending and game over. In order to stop her from falling in, you need to do one of 2 things. First, you can shoot your web at her lowering apparatus in order to stall her demise. Secondly, and most importantly, kill Kingpin. Easier said than done. Kingpin has one of the worst hitboxes in the history of gaming. I cannot stress this enough. When I was a kid and when my parents tried, we did not get far with Kingpin. Even with the web shield equipped, we just couldn't hit the damn guy. So either Mary Jane would croak, or eventually we'd lose the war against the pin, and it wasn't until recently that I even figured out how to hit him. I go over this in detail in my no death run, but the rough overview is you want to have your web shield equipped just in case. You jump into Kingpin's body, I use his blue/green undershirt as a visual aid, and then I press the melee attack button just before reaching the ground. It takes practice, timing, and a bit of luck. And you have to hit the guy, I believe, 9 times? Yikes. If his hitbox was just a little better, this ending would not be as brutal. The battle against Kingpin is one of the biggest difficulty spikes in all of gaming. All that being said, it's time to give Spider-Man vs. Kingpin my rating. Despite my nostalgia, I actually give it a 7.75 out of 10. Fans of the web slinger will get great joy out of this classic. There's a variety of supervillains, cool gimmicks, stages, and a great soundtrack that provide for an enjoyable experience. However, the game could be a little on the short side. Some people might not like the gimmicks in the game, the wall climbing and hitboxes at time could be a bit meh, and the Kingpin battle honestly sucks. It's a huge buzzkill. That alone probably knocked down a full point for me. I'm not kidding. In the end, this is one of the better superhero games in the 16-bit era, ripe with atmosphere and stepping a little outside of the box, providing for a memorable experience. If you've enjoyed this review, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing if you haven't already. I do my best to reply to all comments and all videos. Until next time.